Hi y'all, it's Teresa in Gemma's house. Well, here it is Halloween season again, and I pulled out this quilt that I made 10 months ago last year, and I'm using it on my bed during Halloween season, which is one of my favorite seasons of the year. I had these fabrics and I put them together, and I couldn't wait to make a quilt using all these fabrics together. Don't the colors look like something you would use around Halloween time? And I just love the designs on these fabrics too. And I used a high loft polyester batting, which is different for me, and it makes it nice and squishy and soft and really warm too. So if you didn't see this video last year, why don't you take a look and you can see how I made it. Well, I feel like starting a new quilt project. In fact, this morning I kept dreaming about how to start the design for this quilt. And I kept tossing and turning and falling back to sleep and continuing to dream about how to start this design. And it gave me a clear idea of how to start it from the middle of the quilt and then just working outwards. And like I do with a lot of my quilts, I just design as I go. So I had bought these fabrics, about a yard each, on sale. And I like the color combination a lot. I am really thrilled to do a quilt with this unusual color combination. And I also bought this really nice flannel, also on sale at the same store, and I bought a bolt, so I got a really good price on it. And that is going to be the backing. And for this quilt, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to use a polyester high loft batting instead of the 100% cotton batting that I usually use in my quilts. And I'm not going to free motion quilt on this quilt. I'm just going to quilt it with straight lines when I'm finished. In my dream, it clearly showed to use this as the center, and then having strips of these fabrics and patterns down from there and up from here, and that will make the entire center part of the quilt, and I'll build out the design from there. So I want to get started on this design. Okay, we have a beautiful sunny morning this morning. This is how far I got sewing the center panel for the quilt last night. And I went through so many different combinations trying to figure out the colors and patterns I wanted to put beside each other surrounding this black sun and moon pattern. And I finally decided on this one. I think I just really like a consistent look to the pattern. And it's not exactly the same on the bottom as it is on the top. I have these different strips cut at different dimensions. What I had to do with this center fabric, I noticed that the suns were running uphill a little bit and it didn't look right. So I squared it up, and that's why I lost a little bit on the width. So it ended up being 43 wide, and this is 44 inches high. So I'll add borders now. Okay, so I'm going to make this quilt different than all the other quilts I've made so far. When I have a quilt on the bed, I only have it pulled up to where my pillows are. I never have the quilt covering my pillows. I know regular bedspreads are long enough that you can cover the pillows entirely and tuck a little bit under the pillows. I never do that with my quilts. So I'm going to make this design so that it looks nice on the top of the bed like this, up to where the pillows are. But right away, I'm loving this color combination. I will use this throughout the year. I just really love these fabrics that have moons and suns and clouds and stars. I just really love the oranges combined with the purples. Okay, so I got an idea. I'm going to go with an additional 8 inches on all of the sides around this center panel. And then I'll have strips going in this direction on the bottom and on the top. Okay, so this is what I got done today. I think I'm going to quit for the evening, and I need to do a little strategizing. I like these stripes at the bottom and top. It's looking pretty busy, but that's what a lot of my quilts look like. And quilts in general, I think, they tend to look a little busy. But I'm going to keep going. So for the sides of the panel, I cut strips of the same width out of the 2 purple patterns, and I'll alternate them to make strips for the lengths along the panel. Okay, so I tried to minimize the busyness by only using purple fabrics on the 2 sides of the center panel. This is the bottom of the quilt. I need about a 17-inch drop. For this strip, I'm going to extend them down the bottom. I had to do a lot of math. I figured out my design. I'm going to add a strip of blue and a strip of the black and white sun and moon fabric in the drop also. So I had to do a lot of math to figure that out. But you know what? I think this increases your creativity when you have to do things like this by just making up your design as you go and just using the fabric you have on hand. So I finished the center portion of the quilt, and then I made the drop for the one side. And I just have to do another side over there. I might quilt this section first by itself because it's easier to do a smaller quilt in the machine rather than having to quilt an entire large queen-size quilt that is all sewn together already. So if you saw my 2 videos I made of extending the width and length of existing quilts by adding on a border, this is a similar idea. So if you haven't seen those 2 videos, I'll link them to the end of this video if you'd like to watch those too. So I bought 6 yards of this high loft ultra weight polyester batting. It's 48 inches wide. I bought it a couple months ago for this project. So after I decided how I wanted to position it behind the center panel of the quilt, I decided to put a seam of the batting right up the center of the center panel of the quilt. And I sewed it with 1 thread so that it doesn't come apart after washing and drying the quilt. After measuring the cotton flannel for the backing, I decided to use the full 44-inch width of this fabric in the middle and then piece other pieces along the sides to fit this center panel of the quilt. So I have the cotton flannel backing face down, and then I put the polyester batting on top, and now the quilt top. And actually, I noticed a big difference using this polyester batting. It wasn't easy putting the quilt sandwich together. After I pinned it real good with my quilting pins, I had to flip it over a couple times and check to make sure there weren't any buckles on the backing. And there were a few, so I had to do this a few times and take pins out and smooth it out and put the pins back in. Okay, so now I can start quilting, and I'm just going to quilt this with straight lines along the lines of the front. The top thread, I'm just going to use a white because I have such a variety of prints on here, and I'm going to be stitching in the ditch as close as I can, so you probably won't even see it that much. For the back, I'm using this dark blue because I would like the stitch lines to disappear. Okay, so I'm really excited to start quilting this quilt top. And I'm going to start in the middle, right here, on these lines going this way. And since this is high loft polyester batting, this is pretty bulky. I'm going to roll it up on this side and put this side in the throat of the machine. But first, I put my walking foot on, and it's a good thing I did because, boy, I would never have been able to do this without a walking foot. And I put my quilting gloves on because I can't quilt without those either. And I'll tell you, this was so bulky, so I was really struggling with it. But boy, that walking foot was really essential. Okay, looking at the back, I'm encouraged. It doesn't look bad. I was fearing that it was bunching up back there because that flannel. Yeah, but I think it's looking okay. I also decided to free motion quilt around these sun and moon patterns in this black and white fabric on the center panel. Okay, those turned out pretty well. And they look good on the back too. Oh my gosh, I finally got the center panel quilted. And using this high loft polyester batting is difficult. But I just love how puffy it is. And that's what that high loft polyester batting will give you. And the back turned out wonderful too. I would say that I would not be able to do this if it wasn't for my walking foot, because I think the walking foot is to credit for not causing any buckles on this flannel backing. Okay, so this is one of the side panels. This is the drop. And as I'm pinning this together, I have the quilt top lined up with the edge of the batting, and then I'm leaving about 1 1/8 of the flannel backing fabric showing. This is the inside edge where I'll be sewing it onto the center panel of the quilt. Okay, so I got both of the side panels all sewn together with the backing and batting. And so now it's time to join the side panels with the center panel. And along this inside edge, I didn't sew it. I just left it open. But I have the pins a couple inches away from the edge to keep the backing fabric in place. And I'm pulling back the backing fabric. That's why I didn't sew it on this seam. And I'm going to pin the side panel to the center panel of the quilt, and then I'll sew it, leaving the backing fabric pulled back. Okay, so this is slow going because this quilt is so bulky from this batting. So now I want to flip this over so that the backing is facing up. Okay. I'm just going to turn this under to cover that seam. And I'm going to hand stitch this because if I top stitch it, I don't think the top stitching will line up well with the other lines on the other side of the quilt. Okay, it's finished. I just finished putting the binding on and it did fit in my washer and dryer, so I was happy about that too. And look, it just so happens that I made these pillow shams and this pillow 19 years ago. And don't they match nicely? It's wide wale corduroy, which I really love. So just a few final thoughts on using this high loft polyester batting. Compared to the 100% cotton batting that I usually use in my quilts, this was difficult. And it was very bulky and stiff when I was quilting it in the machine, so it was really hard to maneuver around. But you know what? It's my warmest quilt so far. It got down to really low temperatures last night in the house, and this quilt was so cozy warm. And also because I have this nice flannel backing too, that really helped. But this high loft polyester batting really made it much warmer. And I looked at all of my receipts for the fabric and batting for this quilt, and this is what it cost me, just in case you're interested. So I hope this video gave you some ideas of quilt projects you can do in your own home. And can I also ask you to check my main Gemma's House channel page. If you click on the videos tab, you can scroll around and maybe you'll see another video or two that you're interested in watching. I do a lot of other projects in my house and yard, not just quilting. So thanks so much for watching. I really do appreciate the viewer support. Bye-bye.